Hey, what is up, Declaration? Hey, what is up, Declaration Church? Hey, what is up, Declaration family? Hey, what is up? And happy Thankful Thursday to all you people out there in Cyberland. What is up, Declaration Church? Hey, what is up, Declaration? Hey, what is up, Declaration family? Hey, what is up? And welcome to Epilogue. Hey, what is up, Declaration Church? Thank you for being here on this Thankful Thursday to watch Epilogue. I'm here with Pastor John, again, who is back from his vacation.
It was kind of just a few days away.
Few days away. That's a vacation.
I guess it is.
I mean, it's not like a
long time.
vacation.
No, yeah, just a few days. It was good. It was good.
Just some time with the wife.
That's right.
Nice.
Much necessary, much needed. Good time.
Very good. Well, if you missed the sermon, Pastor John was here Sunday giving the sermon. He was here, and but it was week 3 of Frontlines. So if you missed it, go back, check that out. You can find it on YouTube or declaration.org. But so this week it's the third week of 4 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. So there's one more week this Sunday. So come to that. But this week, tell me. The main point this week, which this whole series has been about spiritual warfare, and I know the first week you talked a lot about, we have a God. Well, I guess Blaine did the first week, right? Blaine did the first week. Then John talked about, man, we have a God who's victorious, who wins in the end. Yeah. This week was very much that, man, we have to walk in the Spirit.
Yeah. So we spent the better part of the series just kind of trying to keep it really simple, but also giving a lot of information, right? So obviously, main points are we are in a very real spiritual battle. We do have a very real enemy. Our battle is not against flesh and blood. It's against spiritual forces, the demonic forces, the enemy, and Satan. And we like to kind of make each other the enemy, but that's really not the real battle. And, this week we spent some time just talking about the battlefield of the mind. And obviously, we're called to the front lines. We don't really have a choice in that matter. We can put our head in the sand and act like it doesn't exist. We can be a part of the 59% that doesn't believe that the devil's real, which is a legitimate statistic that we've been saying for the last few weeks, and that's of polled Christians, people who profess to believe in Jesus. 59% don't even really believe. They believe that the devil is just a figurehead or a symbol of evil rather than an actual entity that you're in battle with. And so we are on the front lines, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not. And, just kind of challenge some of that a little bit, even just saying, hey, where do you, asked a lot of questions this week just to kind of just get a spiritual pulse, if you will, for everyone just to kind of individually kind of take their own kind of assessment. And just talked about from my own life, which this next week I'll give even more examples, just me from our life of spiritual warfare and doing that battle. But we just spend some time in the book of Galatians and just kind of how Paul spoke to the church in Galatia about spiritual warfare, even though he didn't call it out like spiritual warfare. He was calling out those Judaizers trying to get the believers in Jesus who had been impacted by the gospel to add to their salvation. And so, but again, that's spiritual warfare. And we have that happening right here in our neighborhood. We have a lot of different organizations that call themselves a church, but they're really not about Jesus being the way to salvation. Jesus is a part of it because it's almost like, that's kind of the draw, if you will.
Well, I know that you say a lot. I'm sure if you've ever watched any of this, you've heard John say, we're an important part of the story. We're not the point of the story.
Right.
And just like what you said on Sunday, at some of these other religions and whatever you want to call them, it's kind of the opposite, right? Jesus is a part of the story, but really the point of the story
is you, right? And that's actually, you'll hear this coming Sunday, I'll actually talk about that and how the enemy, probably the most clever tactic of the enemy and how he operates is by getting you to a place where you believe you are the point. Yeah. And that is the tragic reality of, I think, the sickness of our society, honestly, because a lot of us are very self-absorbed. I know I've been through my seasons of, being self-absorbed, self-consumed, whatever, so I can't really, I guess I can speak because I was, right, or I have been, and I'm sure we all, that's kind of a daily battle, too, of flesh and spirit.
It's very much the culture we live in.
It is the culture we live in, and it's a dangerous, it's a dangerous paradoxical ideology, in a way, of because obviously, I don't want to dive too deep into that thought process, but it's just a dangerous ideology. While I like we always talk about this, love our country, love being American, tear up with Lee Greenwood every time you hear it. But, God bless the USA. But but at the same time, we are in, not of, and this is really not our home.
Yeah.
And so we are to be more like Christ. We are to imitate God as beloved children, Ephesians 5. And in that, Jesus didn't really have a place to lay his head. And I know that's not really our culture, right? Like, it's like we kind of work for bigger and better sometimes, seemingly. But at the end of the day, our heart should be postured in a way that is constantly coming to that place of dying to self. And that's just not really, that's not a lot. We're not preaching that a lot. That's not what you're hearing, at least in practice. I think that's not what we're even seeing, even in the American church.
Yeah.
Like now it feels like you almost have to, just cater. Like I said, I made a comment this last week, like people going from church to church, like it's cruise ship to cruise ship, looking for the right amenities and the pretty people, and and that's what they're looking for, deciding whether or not that's their house or not. And that's just not the way God works and operates. Yeah. In fact, Jesus, when he went to call the disciples, he went to the ones that all the other rabbis had passed over. Yeah. So they were really misfits in a way, right? And one of my favorite things that I've been thinking about lately is just the call of Simon Peter. He's just this misfit Christian, this fisherman, if you will. And Jesus looks at him where everyone else sees this misfit fisherman. Jesus sees the rock in which he's going to build his church, right? And so it's just a way about it's a mindset, right? In a sense, partly.
It's like 1 Corinthians 2, when Paul's talking about I become all things. I become weak for those who are weak, all for the point of the gospel,
right?
Becoming, and Jesus did that with Peter, right? He
right.
went to, and he made it. He talked to him in a language that he understood,
right? And so we, as faith people, right? People who profess to believe in Jesus, like our mindset truly has to be, like Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, come and die. Like die to self, die to agenda, die to my own desires, or at least discern whether or not those desires are fleshly because it feeds me, or if I'm feeding the spirit and dying to flesh because it honors God more, right? And I think that's the posture by which we're supposed to be operating. And so that's kind of what we talked about when it comes to spiritual warfare this week. And we looked at Paul in Galatians 5 when he dissects the difference, if you will, between the deeds of the flesh versus the fruit of the spirit. And so he kind of juxtaposes the two. And one of the main points that I wanted to make, and there's just only so much time to really do that message. And so I probably should have made it a 2-part just on that one, just to really be able to spend more time there. But the point I really wanted to hopefully drive home was helping people see, at least this is one way that I've done this, where I'm engaged in spiritual battle, and I can articulate the deeds of my flesh, right? I mean, I know me, right? And the Lord knows me. And so he can help me even, point out those things that might grieve him. And so I can write those things down. And for everything that I see that would be a work of my flesh, or a way that I'm feeding my flesh, myself, making it about me, there's usually an opposite in the fruit of the Spirit. So I'm going to pray away. I'm going to rebuke, renounce, and tell those things that do not honor God, that they need to go. And I'm going to invite the Lord to replace the vacancy of that fleshly, carnal desire, thought, whatever, with the opposite of that we see in the listing of the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah. You talked about that this Sunday, and you talked about for yourself, even with like anxiety and just praying peace. And I remember that because you said too at one point in that, it doesn't matter if you pray that every minute for 25 minutes. Eventually, there's going to be that 26th minute. And for
That's
you,
right.
you even talked about there was a moment during worship at some point where it just kind of clicked and that switch happened.
Yeah, because for whatever reason, Sunday, man, I just was hit with this weird wave of anxiety. And I leaned over and told Kelly at one point, and I think she must have just been kind of processing through and praying over that. And she kind of leaned back in and gave me kind of a word about it. And it's basically when she spoke what she spoke, it felt like it just kind of broke. And it's not that I hadn't been praying about that. Yeah. And here's the deal. It's not that God was ignoring me. Right? It's not that God was ambivalent. It's not that God wasn't working in my waiting. It's not none of those things. It's just what was God trying to show me, reveal to me, to teach me, even in that moment of me doing battle, right? I mean, gosh, let's talk about battle for a minute. We just got out of a battle that's literally lasted since 2001. And some would argue that we're not out of that battle. In fact, it's just raging back up. We just abdicated, right? Some would say that. Others on the other side, whatever side of the aisle you decide to sit on, you've got an opinion. Nevertheless, the point of that whole thing is, now everybody's like Twitter war right there, but the point of that is that battle lasts a long time. P.S., man, there's going to be all sorts of little battles we're going to face daily, but we're going to be grinding in this battle until we take our last breath on this side, because we are in the process of sanctification. Sometimes God uses a wilderness and a desert and a battlefield in order to bring the sanctification, you know. And so you know, that's why I say we are on the front lines, and we can ignore that. We can be naive and act like that, you know, that it's not real. We can choose to be simple, as Solomon would say, which I may spend some time this Sunday in that. But the truth of the matter is it doesn't make it any less real. It doesn't make it. And here's the thing: you might not think it impacts you, but it does. Yeah. Because as us as parents, we're going to try to fill our kids' lives with as much satisfaction and joy, and you know, we're going to fill their time with things that grow them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, whether it's sports or blah, 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 blah. But if we're not engaged spiritually, dude, I mean, that battle is going to ravage your family if you just ignore it. I mean, they may learn to throw a softball or a baseball or a football or whatever, play basketball, but they need to learn how to stand before God. And, I mean, there's a 100% assurance that they're going to stand before God versus the whatever percentile, you know, potential or possibility that they may play pro sports. But man, we have got our priorities all out of whack. And I you know, I know people are like, man, he's always hammering that. I'm not trying to. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but there is something wrong with it when 24/7 of your life is yielded at the altar of that, even if it's in the name of your children, and you're not trying to pour into your children the reality of who God is, you know, or the reality of they're in a battle, you know, the time that they're engaged in all the social media stuff that's dictating their identity. Well, no wonder why. What is spiritually being poured into their identity, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know how else to scream that, you know, and no parent, we're not perfect, right? Like it's the other part of that is like, how do you live in the world and not of the world, right? And so that's a challenge as well, but it doesn't take away that there is a very real battle. The enemy is going to do everything he can to derail you, to, you know, divide you, to depress you. Ultimately, his destruction is on his mind, and that's what he's going to go after. Even if he has to wait a long time and just, you know, drip, 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 till finally you realize, man, your ceiling just caved in. You know what I'm saying? Because he's gonna do what he's got to do. You know, and so the whole point, hopefully, the heart of the series is kind of that wake up call for all of us to say, man, what are you doing? Yeah. Do you see what's going on? Do you realize what's happening? You know. I think politically we all have this idea of, oh, this is what's happening, but what's bigger than that? Like, what's behind that, right? There's something bigger than that. And so, yeah, man, I think that's the other thing I think the enemy does. He puts our eyes on all these other little battles that really don't make sense. They're just... Or pits us against each other. Yeah, right? It's like byproducts of the real battle, right? Yeah. And so then we fight over those things, and then we continue to ignore the real battle.
So I think it was the first week where Blaine talked about, maybe the second week a little bit too, really talking about we're not against each other.
Right.
We're against.
We've kind of done that every week.
That's true. I mean, that's kind of the point of all of this.
It is, because, I mean, even in the church, like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard of great people who say, well, we're not going to go to this church or that church because so-and-so goes there. Yeah. And I'm like, man, I mean, I've got opinions about that, but that's tough, man. It's like, okay, well, are you not doing... Here's what I think I say. You know, as someone who's been through plenty of offense and hurt and everything else, like, I had to come to the other side of that where I realized, okay, but what if that's Nineveh? Yeah. You know, what if that's exactly where God wants you to go? And what if you need to face your stuff and get over yourself and forgive because you've been forgiven, and give grace because you've been given grace, and offer mercy because you received it? And what if, right? But, you know, part of, I think, the wake-up call, too, just like with the last few series, honestly, Last Letter, Breath, all of it, is this call to maturity. And, you know, that's the other thing is, like, you know, come on, believer of Jesus, it's time to get on the front lines and to grow up a little bit. Yeah, man, and stop acting like, you know, Sunday morning is the only time you eat. Look, we eat three a day, most of us, right? And so, spiritually, what are you doing? You know, like, Let's see. Yeah, man.
Go
I'm
on a
getting
whole
wound
tangent.
up, man. I'm getting wound up. But yeah, it's just like it's just time. It's
Yeah.
so time because things are not getting any better, and at least as we see that, society goes. Our job is to be about redeeming and reconciling things, and so if we want to see things get better, that's going to come through, Jesus, people being like Jesus.
Yeah.
It's not going to come through political. I mean, political action is one thing, great, in Jesus' name, whatever you. But man, first of all, be like Jesus, before you start claiming Jesus, right? And so, I
mean, that's good. That's a great place to end, honestly.
Yeah.
Kind of ends with, walk in the Spirit, right? That's what.
Walk in the Spirit. And,
do what you see the Father doing.
We didn't really dive into that here with
Yeah.
Epilogue, but we did on Sunday.
Yeah, we did.
And so this is the first time that I think that actually Sunday gives a little bit more in depth too than the Epilogue does.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would encourage it because, and even still, it's not deeply in depth. It's just for me, there is some things to it, right, that I think are valuable for sure. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spent the real estate of time to share.
Yeah, and I think for me too, I think what the last few weeks has done is kind of, because like you said, I really feel like the last two series have really kind of brought a new thought to my head of like, really, what am I supposed to be doing?
Right.
Priorities, right?
Right.
And then now this one is coming. It's making me think more about, because it's easy to get in your
routine habit,
and getting hurt, feeling bad, whatever the case may be. But this is getting me to think more about the people. Like, obviously, hurt people, right?
Right.
And then healed people.
Yeah.
And so it's like, man, I don't know. I just think that's what has been going through my head is it's everything is pointing back to the priority being Jesus, whether that's in our day-to-day walk or our spiritual, everything points back to Jesus and
right.
takes the look off of myself,
right,
and puts it back on Jesus.
Right. And that, ultimately, I think that this has been the age-old, message of many, many faith fathers and many pastors gone by. That's why, you see C.S. Lewis writing Screwtape letters in the 40s. You see A.W. Tozer saying some things that when we read them today, we're like, oh my gosh, because you realize, man, that it's like almost he saw through time. No, he just realized that the same junk was going on when he wrote that, right? And so at what point does the church begin to actually, rise up? And I think that you've seen little moments of that. But here's the thing. I think that the world is poised for a great awakening right now. And too many things point to it. Too many prophetic voices are screaming it. And, as far as declaration goes, I don't feel responsible to pastor the world. I feel responsible to declaration. And so as far as declaration goes, I want us to be on the front line of that. Not only the battle, because that's what we're supposed to be, but also I want us to be on the front line of the revival. And so that's why maybe the last few are seemingly sounding like more of a harder prophetic voice in a sense. Hopefully that's still encouraging because that's the way prophecy needs to work. But I do also realize that some of the messaging has been a little tougher, and again, that's it. The motivation is love, though. Yeah, the motivation is, man, because I love you. It's just kind of like I said, that one illustration. If someone standing on a track of an oncoming train, it's not loving to say, well, you do you, but you get them off the track, right? And so that's kind of some of the angst or the unction, I'd say, behind some of this messaging.
That's good. Well, hey, guys, thank you again for being a part of this. Really, if you haven't caught this series, go back and watch it. It's been pretty awesome. And then come Sunday, and catch week 4 of Frontlines. And we love you. Hope you guys have a great Thursday, and we'll catch you on Sunday.